Arnott Air Suspension Products. Mercedes installation. Removal. Step 1. Disconnecting the battery. To avoid the possibility of short circuits while working with electric components, consult your owner's manual on how to disconnect your battery. Always wear safety glasses when doing automotive maintenance. Removal. Step 2. Wheel removal. Start by removing the wheel's lug nuts. Once the lug nuts are removed, carefully take off the wheel. Removal. Step 3. Disconnect the shock control. Disconnect the shock control cable located in the fender well. Loosen the 2 set screws. This will be found on the bottom of the shock assembly. Then, with the proper tools, loosen and remove the bolt that attaches to the upper A-arm. Removal. Step 4. Removing the shock assembly. With the hood raised, disconnect the air supply line to the shock assembly. Remove the 3 nuts holding the top mount of the shock. Finally, remove the shock assembly from the vehicle. Install. Step 1. Preparing the Arnott shock for installation. Remove the 3 nuts on the top mount of the shock assembly. Install. Step 2. Installing the new shock. While the car is on the raised lift, begin to install the new strut assembly into the upper and lower strut mounts. With the proper tools, reconnect and tighten the bolt that attaches to the upper A-arm. Tighten the 2 set screws equally on the bottom of the strut assembly. Then, tighten the top 3 nuts to the manufacturer's specifications. Install. Step 3. Finishing the install. Install the tires and tighten the lug nuts to the manufacturer's specifications. Removal. Step 1. Wheel removal. Once the vehicle is raised, start by removing the wheel's lug nuts. Once the lug nuts are removed, carefully take off the wheel. Removal. Step 2. Removing the air shock connector. In the rear window area, remove the side cover of the hat rack to expose the top of the air shock. Then, disconnect the air line and the 3 mounting nuts from the top of the air shock. Removal. Step 3. Removing the rear brake caliper. Remove the rubber boot and disconnect the electrical connector leading to the shock damper solenoid. Then, remove the retaining clip. Next, loosen the 2 bolts on the back side of the caliper. Then, secure the caliper. When you are working on the right side of the vehicle, there is an extra step when you remove the retaining clip. Disconnect the sensor connector and remove the sensor bracket. Then proceed as normal. Removal. Step 4. Disassembling the suspension arm. Start by removing the bolt from the sway bar end link. Then, disconnect the sway bar end link. Remove the outer lower control arm bolt. Then remove the control arm bolt attached to the bottom of the shock. Removal. Step 5. Removing the shock assembly. Once the bolts are removed, the control arm will then swing down. Finally, remove the shock assembly from the car. Install. Step 1. Preparing the Arnott shock for installation. Remove the 3 nuts on the top mount of the strut assembly. Install. Step 2. Installing the new shock. Install the new coil conversion strut assembly into the top mounting holes. Install the bolts that connect the strut assembly to the suspension. Tighten the top 3 nuts. Reinstall the hat rack side cover. Install. Step 3. Assembling the lower control arm. Use the remaining bolt to reconnect the outer control arm. It may be necessary to use a jack under the control arm to install this bolt and nut. Reattach the sway bar end link. Install. Step 4. Reconnecting the rear brake caliper. Reinstall the rear brake caliper. Once the caliper is installed, tighten the 2 bolts on the back side of the caliper. Reinstall the retaining clip. When you are working on the right side of the car, there is an extra step after you replace the retaining clip. Reinstall the sensor connector and the sensor bracket bolt. Then proceed as normal. Install. Step 5. Finishing the install. Install the rear tire and tighten the lug nuts to the manufacturer's specifications. Arnott Air Suspension Products. Mercedes installation. Install. Step 1. Prepping for installation. Locate the N51 control module. This is usually located on the left side of the car. Once located, verify that the module has TEMEC printed on the module. If it does, proceed with the following steps. Install. Step 2. Installing the electronic bypass module. After verifying the computer has TEMEC printed on it, disconnect all 3 multi-pin connectors permanently. Run the ground wire from the EBM to the nearest vehicle ground terminal. Connect the light blue connector from the EBM to the wire harness side of the vehicle's N51 CAN bus 2-pin connector. Connect the electronic bypass module and install it into the fuse holder. Install. Step 3. Finishing the install. Reinstall the fuse box cover. To avoid the possibility of short circuits while working with electric components, consult your owner's manual on how to reconnect your battery. Installation completed. Congratulations! Lower the car to test drive and check the installation.